Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Stitching Tales. I am Johanna Lundström, the author of several sewing books, and I also have my own online sewing courses, including Cover Stitch Success and Denim Mastery, and I also create sewing patterns under the brand name The Last Stitch.
My name is Malena and Hjerpe, and I work as a freelance pattern maker, and I also create my own PDF pattern under the name Hazelhen Patterns.
And in today's episode, we are going to talk about common sewing machines mistake, because I think we've all done it, and some of us, me basically, keep doing them. So I think that's a good starting point for sharing our own experience, and also perhaps some tips that other people can find useful, hopefully. But before we do that, I thought it would be nice to do a little bit of a catch-up. So Malena, what's been going on in your world since the last time we did an update?
Well, really nothing new, to be honest. It's like, yeah, what's happened? Nothing, basically. No, I mean, I'm just keeping on working, freelance work. So that has been taking basically all my time, which, I mean, it's fun. I do enjoy it. So I'm not complaining at all. But I mean, I haven't been able to work anything on my own project, so that again has to wait. But it has been one little fun update. Every now and then I'm helping out the guest design department at H&M when they do like these big collaborations. So that one has been now released, the next one. And it is Magda Butrym. I don't know how to pronounce that name. But it's like, it has been so many nice styles, a lot of jersey garments, which I mean, obviously I love. Lots of gatherings, lots of layerings. It was just like a fun project to work with, and it's so nice to see also the pictures, because when we are done, then it doesn't come to store obviously the next week or something. It's quite a long process when we are done until it's being launched, and to see those pictures then, like, you know, on models and everything is like, you know, fancy makeup, hair, everything. It's just like so you fall in love with the products again. So that has been really like so much fun to see those pictures, and it was really, I mean, lovely collaboration as well, and yeah, it was a fun project to be helping out with. So that has been one fun update. Otherwise, yeah, same.
Yeah, it is what it is. But before we start recording, you showed me a picture of the collection, and I think it was pretty mind-blowing. I love all the detailing, and it shows a good craftsmanship in every level. So it was cool if you could share perhaps some photos of the collection on our Instagram account.
Yeah,
Stitching
I can
Tales Pod.
do that.
And so that would be really exciting to see. For you who don't know or listening, Malena is doing primarily work for H&M. So you've done, this is not your first designer collaboration, because you did one, was it last year, with the Terry Mugler one? Yeah, I was part of that project as well, and I mean a lot of other projects also that they have done. And I mean, it's they ask freelancer basically to help out whenever they can't manage, because I mean, obviously when you do like these kind of project, is a few weeks that is like crazy much to do, and then it's more calm the other weeks. So whenever those peaks basically, then they ask us to help out. So it could be that, yeah, some cases I have been working with one project like basically from start to finish, but most of the time it's we are helping each other out, like some sample handlings, maybe the pattern makers that are working there, they have taken care of it, and then I do it the next time, and like we take turns basically. So it's usually, I mean, it's not me who have done one style completely. We are so many people involved in those products, so it's like it's a really collaboration from from us working as well. But yeah, no, it's a fun styles, because I mean, obviously they are very different compared to the regular, you know, everyday garments, but it's also those kind of style that might give you know, those, your eyes starts to twitch a little bit, and like, how am I supposed to do this? Yeah. It's a little bit more complicated styles as well, but fun challenges.
So yeah, you get like these sketches, and then you try to interpret it and turning into an actual pattern that can be cut out, which is kind of mind blowing, because it's such a, as you say, it's like building a geometry and figure everything out. Because normally, I mean, most garments are quite the same. I mean, a T-shirt is a T-shirt, and a pair of pants is a pair of pants, just small adjustments. So I must imagine that your brain really needs to like expand and really work really hard just to figure all these things out, which is kind of fascinating. Because the styles I saw a little bit, it reminds me a little bit of the Pattern Magic books, the Japanese. So because the one is for knits as well, and where you can like, how is that even possible? And then you see the flat pattern, and you're like, yeah, it is possible, but like it's still hard to figure out when you're not familiar with that kind of construction and 3D thinking.
Yeah, it's a completely different problem-solving mindset you need to have. So it's really like brain exercise as well when you do it. So it's fun to do those things, but it's also quite fun to go back to, okay, now we do normal garments again.
It's funny.
Because they are a little bit more complicated.
But do you ever get, because you do, this is so interesting, because in your day job or as a freelance, you do such diversity. I mean, if you're not familiar with H&M, all the lines divided is quite like a simple. There's a lot of jersey, T-shirts and sweatshirts, and
they do a lot of complicated stuff as well.
They do that as well.
Yeah,
so apologies.
Sorry, divided in more the younger adults,
right?
So they are like very trend sensitive as well. So this is a lot about the latest trend there as well. So yeah, there is also like really like the style really vary a lot. So that's also a really fun department to work with, because you can, it's so many different types of garments you get to help out with. And it's a little bit fun thing how to think about the fit there, because me as a customer, I mean, obviously I create something that I would be comfortable in, and then since it's divided, it's a young customer, then I make it a little bit tighter, a little bit shorter, and then it's fine.
Everything is kind of cropped.
I'm not that customer.
Everything is kind of cropped and divided. I think when I go shop there, it's kind of, there's no tops that is hitting mid hips. at least last time I checked.
Yeah, and this is so important to like know your customer, because this is a different type of customer. It's not my personal preferences that I need to follow. It is actually, what do the customer want? That could be completely different compared to what I want or what I'm comfortable with. So you can't really, I mean, comfortable garments is a comfortable garment, but what kind of style do they want to do? So you really have to think about the customer, regardless of what you are making, like what do the customer want?
But do you ever get, because in your own sewing pattern line, because you do work with a lot of like fashion forward styles as freelance for H&M, do you ever get like, can you feel that kind of shift, how do you say it, coming through to your own like ideas for new sewing patterns, or is that like a division there? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, well, being realistic, first of all, I'm not a trendy person, so most of the trends are like, really? Okay, is this what people like now? Okay, sure, whatever. I'm not a trendy person, so whenever a trend becomes big, maybe a couple of years later, then I kind of like it or not. Mostly, it passes through. I see it, I recognize it, I continue wear my classic garments. And the thing with trends, I mean, you can see that, okay, this is like a huge trend right now. You see it everywhere. If I make a garment, a pattern for that kind of trend, I mean, it's gonna be gone before I'm done. So it's no point for me to start to create a specific trend, because it's gonna be out of style. And unfortunately, this is the thing I hate about trends. Like, the more trendy, the more modern something is, I mean, it is gonna feel untrendy and so dated a couple of years later. And from a sustainable environmental point of view, that's the thing that I hate about fast fashion, that it feels dated. So you can't, I'm using air quotes now, you can't wear a garment because it feels dated, but the garments are still fine to wear. So yeah, that's my internal struggle with like, I don't really like trends, but I'm working with trends. So yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah, it is complicated because of course there's an expression of creativity and our need for change and discovering new things. And as you say, it's also a problematic side to that. And also as a business decision as well, I think both of us kind of gravitate towards more classic styles in our own sewing patterns because of that reason. Also, you put so much work into launching a sewing pattern, so hitting a trend, it's gonna like you might get a big peak in sales initially, and then it's gonna taper up pretty quickly, which is not like helpful in our business because obviously we don't release patterns that often as well. So also because if we would try to be trendy, we would also, because we're such slow workers, right? we would kind of miss the trend because when we're able to release the pattern, it's probably over.
Yeah, we get distracted by making books or things, so so the patterns are a little bit the last thing on our priority list, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's kind of where that, and also to me as well. I mean, so the way I think about it when I launch a sewing pattern, I always try to add some detailing that makes it interesting, but I try to think of the details as being quite timeless and classic. So that's kind of how I navigate this problem, because it is an issue that you have to deal with when you're running a business. You have to like figure out where you can fit in the market and also like align with your values and have it sustainable. Of course. I mean,
you still want your garments to be relevant. Otherwise, I mean, nobody is going to want to buy it, of course.
Yeah.
But how is it going on your side? What's happening?
Yeah, so a couple of things happening. First of all, I, as long-term listeners perhaps know or remember, is that I have been on a break from my day job. I work in communications. I only work part-time these days, so I run the Last Stitch half-time, part-time, and I have a day job part-time. But this 6 months I've been on a leave. And as we all know, time flies, and the older you get, the faster the time goes. So yeah, I have 2 weeks left now on my leave, which is kind of bittersweet because I felt I've been on really good momentum here, and it's going to be a challenge to figure everything out now that I have to balance these two things again. So I'm a little bit like, I wouldn't say I'm worried, but I will keep an eye on how things are feeling and what I have in me, because I feel like I'm so excited now about all the Last Stitch stuff. I mean, as we talked about in previous episode, I want to really like level up my marketing and increase my visibility, and we also have the next book to work on. So I feel like I have a good like momentum, and I feel really like energetic and creative right now. And that I have to like kind of pull back a little bit, because I can't really like live that out fully, because that I will risk a burnout again. So that's a little bit tricky. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, also of course now, as we all know, we're in a very uncertain times on a lot of levels. So for me, having a day job as a stable base income, to me is very, I need my security blanket. So I'm not really ready mentally, especially in times like these, to jump out and be, I'm gonna do this full time, because I feel everything is kind of shaky right now. So it's hard to feel that confidence actually for me.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. But also it's a good, I mean, if you're looking from the positive side, you know what you want then. You want, you like your business, your own business that much that this is something that you want in the future. Maybe not possible right now to work 100% on because of the finances, but that's the goal. You have a goal to work towards. Yeah,
that's very true. That's very, and then it's kind of like the tortoise thing, slow and steady kind of wins the race. And it's kind of fascinating to think about that. I started the Last Stitch, the blog and everything in 2008. So it's going on 17 years. So it's kind of mind-blowing. It's almost 17 years since I started. And this iteration of the business has been going for almost 10 years as well. So it's you make small strides every year, and that's what's kind of you have to remind yourself when you feel like you don't really move the needle, that it's a long, hard slog. But yeah, I love it so much, so I keep going, and it feeds me, and I always find new things to feel passionate about, and new projects and everything. So, and by the way, speaking of.
Sorry, I just want to, like, when you said slow and steady, I think you have done it so smart there, because your product, as we talked about now with trends come and go, like your products, I mean the courses, your books, they are not trend specific or sensitive, so you have like that solid foundation that you have built your company on. Your products are still going to be relevant in 5 years, 10 years, so that, like, such a smart thing. While if you are just working with trends, I mean, you can see, yes, huge sale 2 years on a specific pattern or two, but then that's going to decline if it's not trendy anymore. So yeah, slow and steady. I hear you. I want to go there as well.
Yeah, I think we'll keep doing that method. We have kind of figured it out in a way. Yeah, and speaking about going slow and steady, we actually missed a kind of anniversary last week of the podcast, right, Malena?
Yeah. When I posted on Instagram, I realized that, oh wow, we have been doing this podcast quite some time now.
Yeah. Yeah, so we celebrated 50 episodes without even realizing it until we actually put the number on the episode, which is kind of amazing, because we started in February of 2024, and we've been going pretty steadily. I mean, we take breaks in the summer, and we took break over the holidays in the winter time, but apart from that, we've been going on a steady weekly schedule, I think, for the most part. So It's been really, really great, and I think podcast is also another vehicle that tends to grow slowly over time, because I thought about that, a lot of podcasts that I discover, they have actually been going for several years before they kind of get in front of me in one way or another. So even though you might not, if you start a podcast, you might not get that much traction in the beginning, over time more and more people discover you, and you get this like steady listener base. And I mean, we have usually about between 350 and 700 listens to each episode, which to me is kind of mind-blowing that just in the first couple of days, several hundred of you has listened to us talking about sewing, and of course also what goes on behind the scene of running a sewing business, and also some of our personal lives as well, which so that's very, very nice. It's like a companion. And I would also say I've seen several of you also listeners commenting that you feel like we are kind of your sewing friends, and it's nice to listen to us when you're sewing and doing other things. And that makes me so happy, because that's kind of what we want this podcast to be. That it's basically just a chat between friends. It's just that we talk about sewing and not much gossiping, but but it's the same kind of thing, I think.
Yeah, and it feels amazing to have that community. It's I love that. It's so nice, because as solo entrepreneurs, it can get pretty lonely. So that's just amazing to have somebody. I mean, first of all, we catch up basically every week because of this, and talk and have this podcast, and it's just so nice that other people want to join this as well. So we really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you so much for following along on the journey, and we will keep doing this podcast. We have no plans on doing something otherwise. I guess we should try to also go on to the topic now, because we love to chat, as you know. We can chat about everything. And by the way, I should also say before we start chatting that we would love to do another Q&A episode speaking about you who listen to this episode, and if you have any questions that you want us to address, we do plan to do another Q&A episode. So if you have any questions, you can email us at stitchingtalespod@gmail.com, or you can comment on our Instagram account, Stitching Tales Pod, or our YouTube channel, Stitching Tales Pod. And all the links are in the show notes of this episode. So we will keep those questions coming, because we love to do more of those in the future. I love doing those episodes. It's so funny because you ask so great questions that also sometimes a little bit challenging because I haven't really thought about them myself. So it's very, very good and very, very like we learn stuff as well by listening to what you want to know.
Yeah, definitely. So keep them coming.
Yep, awesome. Now, this topic for this week is common sewing machine mistakes. And when you start using a sewing machine, there are a lot of things that one might not figure out intuitively how to speak, because it is kind of a different machine. So I thought this topic would be good to do and talk about some common stuff and things you can do to avoid common issues. So I will start with you, Malena. Do you have any occurring sewing machines mistake that you have done yourself that you want to share?
Well, many different types of mistakes. But I would say one of the most common issue, very simple mistake, or like you don't notice, is something is wrong with the thread tension. It's not working properly. And I would say like one of the most common thing is then that the thread, when it has been threaded through the machine, it has not been properly placed through the cylinders. What do you call it?
Tension discs.
The tension discs.
Tension discs.
This is both when it comes to like overlockers, sergers, and regular home sewing machines, that the thread has not been like pulled properly in between those discs, and you can easily do that. I mean, by taking a thread and just pulling it slightly, so you can feel that it is in place or not. And when you thread a regular sewing machine, it's very important that you have the presser foot down so the discs are released, and then when you are threading it, they are placed in between. No, sorry.
Presser foot should be up.
I was thinking, I'm going to say this right now.
Shall I interrupt Malena, or shall I let her talk?
Will she figure it out herself?
Don't listen to But we are now talking about mistakes, right? So
exactly.
The mistake is to leave the presser foot down.
Exactly.
Yes.
But
and doing it
when
right
it's
is
down,
to lift it up.
then the cylinders, the discs are close. I mean, because that's when you sew, that's when you need the tension on the thread. So when you put the presser foot up, then those discs are released. So that's when you want to thread the machine, when it's up. I think that's like the most common mistake, and so easy mistake that you don't really realize that it's not like really properly in place, and so easily fixed, obviously, then as well. But if you have any tension issues, that's the first thing that you want to check.
Yeah, very good.
Has this happened to you?
All the time. I mean, honestly, this was kind of a revelation. I will be the first to admit that this was something I learned quite late in my sewing journey. So I have done this repeatedly, and it definitely shows, because there has been issues. And because when the tension is off, maybe you can see that the loops of the under thread is showing through on the upper side, or you just have loose loops of the bobbin thread. And it's true for any type of sewing machine, regardless if you have a serger, a cover stitch machine, or a sewing machine. The presser foot needs to be up before you start tensioning. And as you say, Malena, it's also important. I like to think of it as when you floss your teeth, like you pull the
exactly.
So that's the kind of same feeling that you should do. So it's the first, like, I think, action, regardless of if you have any, if the stitches are not forming properly. It's probably that easy, honestly, that the thread is not quite pulled through properly. So it's a very common mistake. Because then it doesn't have any
tension, basically.
And I mean, not all of us bothers to read the sewing manual. I'm sure it says on the first page, but I mean, that's not how we human works, because we feel like we just want to get started. I think it's the same with most like machines or apparature or whatever you get, that you just want to start. You don't want to read first do this and always remember, and it's also like small text, and it's so you kind of need to have someone telling you that, I think, in order
and this
to
is why you sew on a scrap fabric first in the right fabric that you are going to sew with, because then you will pretty quickly realize that something is wrong, so you can fix it before you actually start sewing on your garment. So this is don't skip the testing step.
Yeah. And one mistake that I do, which feels kind of stupid to say, and I'm definitely being better at that, is that when I insert a needle, I have in the past been kind of not making sure that the needle is pulled through all the way up to the slot and really tightly secured with the screw. Because I can't begin to tell you how many times I've been sewing, especially in thicker material, and the fabric has kind of sucked down the needle, so the needle has let loose. Maybe this is only me, but I mean definitely check that, because when you're in the middle of sewing, especially with top stitching or something like that, and you have the needle to be let loose down in the fabric, you have to start over again. So very simple thing to avoid, but clearly not easy for me to remember. There is also some little tools that you can place the needle in that kind of pushes it up. You can use that as well to just ensure that it sits all the way up in the slot, because if the needle is just a tiny little bit off, you might run into that issue, because then you can't, regardless of how tightly you screw it, it might not stay put, because it has to be all the way up in the slot.
Yeah, I mean that was my next thing on my list, the needle. It could be very, very different problems, but the needle is with the needles, but that's so crucial. And if you change the needle, as you said, unscrew it really properly, because then it's so much easier to put it back in, and when you screw it tighter then. Because if it's not really unscrewed properly, then that's maybe why you can't put it in place properly. So be super careful and mindful about that. And also the placement of the needle, you really have to make sure that it is straight on. Usually sewing needles, they have a flat back, so it's quite easy to make to place it right, so it's not a little bit skewed or anything. But some I think it is on cover locks that it's rounded, or overlocks that it's different type of needle that is rounded, so then it's a little bit trickier to get exactly straight. So my trick there is, if you place it about correct, and then you have another a pin, safety pin, whatever pin, and then you push that in the needle, and to make sure that then you can align it a little bit better and easier. And there is a front and back side of the sewing needle. If you have it 180 degrees turned wrong, it is not going to sew very well. And this is because the needle has have a little ditch basically in the front.
A slot. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and when it goes down, then the thread will be placed in that little slot in the ditch, so it goes down properly. And if it's turned backwards, then you don't have that. So then the usual problem is then that the thread is gonna be breaking when you sew it. So it's so important that it's placed very straight in the correct direction and screwed on properly. Because wrong needle attachment, so many things can happen, and or if it is damaged in any way, the tip is damaged, or it's not really straight, it has been crooked, it is gonna be, you are gonna have so much problems with it then.
Yeah, and needles do take a beating, especially if you're sewing with kind of material that dulls the needle, say having nylon or polyester, some of those materials. Obviously, if you're sewing with lightweight cotton, it might not dull it, but I think synthetic, those where you have to really pierce through, has a tendency of dulling the needle sooner as well. So depending on what you're sewing, you might also need to replace it more often, because a sharp needle is important. And those they do cost a little bit, but I think it's worth investing both in good quality and not overusing, especially on a regular sewing machine. I find that sergers, they tend to be more forgiving about run-down needles. I don't really change those as often as I need to do on my cover stitch machine and my sewing machine. Have you noticed the same thing about the serger? That it seems to be
I agree. It's it feels like it's less sensitive on the overlocker. Not sure why, but I don't change the needle very seldom on the overlocker. It's like, I don't want to touch it. As long as it's working, I don't want to touch it. But on the regular home sewing machine, it's also, I mean, because I shift from sewing something woven and then jersey, I mean, then there are different types of needles for jersey and woven, so that's also very important to change your needle based on your fabric. And for example, a woven thin cotton wool fabric, type of fabric, and then you sew with a really thick denim, you have to have different needles. It's not going to work otherwise. With the denim fabric, you use a lot thicker needle as well, because otherwise, if you have a really thin needle, it will probably break after a while. It's not thick enough. So yeah, always change needle depending on the type of fabric you're working with.
Yeah. And you mentioned about tension, and that was the needle thread, basically, where you have to figure out, getting a placement on the disc. But you can also have issues with the bobbin thread, right, and the bobbin tension. So there is a tip for how to check the bobbin tension. Could you explain that, Malena, even though we can't show it? But
and we have talked about this in, I don't remember which episode now, but we have talked about this before. It is that you want to have the tension of the bobbin thread, like when you hold it, when the bobbin is like in the case and out of the machine, and when you hold the thread, it shouldn't drop by itself. But if you like, how do you say,
yo-yo, like almost
yo-yo,
like a yo-yo,
like you pull it up and down, like just like it should, like the bobbin should be releasing a couple of centimeters for each time you go up and down. If it doesn't do that, it is too tight. If it goes down even without you moving, it is too loose. So it has to have that perfect tension that it loses itself when you move it around, like up and down. But it shouldn't be doing it by itself. And I am a huge fan of actually adjusting the tension. I mean, by yourself. You adjust it a quarter of a quarter at a time. So no big movements here. A quarter looser, then it will be too loose. A quarter too tighter, it will be too tight. So it's really finding that golden middle spot where it's perfect. So small movements there. No drastic changes.
Yeah, very, very good tip. And I do find that I don't know exactly how this happened, but I do find that if you keep on sewing over and over year after year, that the tension, I don't know if the screw is kind of moving very subtly, because I feel like eventually you will have to adjust the tensions a little bit. So it's like I have no fact or verification on this if someone is more of a mechanics, but that's my experience, that even though you haven't even touched the screw or the knob, it will still might need adjustments eventually because of all the sewing that you've done on your sewing machine.
Yeah, but that's I don't find that strange at all, because I mean it is moving parts, it is friction, it is things happening. So then I mean it is gonna be a little bit unscrewed if you're sewing year after year. I mean obviously there are some things happening there, so you might have to tighten it yourself after a while. So that I don't find any strange at all. It is moving parts that is happening in the sewing machine.
Yeah.
How often do you oil your sewing machine? Speaking of moving parts.
I don't want to talk about that. No, too seldom. But I also do service my sewing machine occasionally. I leave it to a professional to just take care of it, because I have such a vintage, nice Medina that I really like. But so if I oil it myself, once a year, maybe less. I don't know. Don't do as I say, because I don't think I'm doing the best job of taking care of my sewing machine. So what about you, Malena?
Yeah, it's not that often either. But then again, I don't sew that often either. So, but yeah, definitely use oil. And here I find the tricky part, I think, is again in the manual. It says where you should place the oil. But now on both my home sewing machine and my overlocker, it is making a little bit too much noise when I sew. So I think that there needs to be oil on. But part where I can't reach, like you need to open up the machine to be able to put oil there. So I can't really do it myself. So yeah, I hear it. It's time for a service, probably on both the machines.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of doing that. I know a lot of you probably do with your own sewing machine, but I feel like it's such a big investment, and yeah, it's kind of pricey, but usually here in Swindon it usually also comes with like a service warrant. So if there are any issues, 6 months after, that will be covered by the warrant. I hope. I haven't not had issues with it, but it's so nice to get that kind of checkup sometimes, and I feel that when I do get my machine serviced, it sews better and more quiet. Maybe I could do this myself, but it's just like I feel it's nice to see that everything checks out right.
I mean these are the people that you want to become best friends with.
Exactly.
Because if there is any issues, they can help out. And if there are any settings on we have talked about the ladder stitch, for example, on an overlocker. And I find it so boring and tricky sometimes to understand the manual, ask them. And they can show you how to do the different settings for the different machines, or if you have any questions, or they should become your best friend. So don't skip it.
Yeah, very good advice. And I've been going to the same mechanic shop for I think 15 years, and it's so nice because I trust them very much. Because I moved now, so I thought basically if I should check out another, but I don't feel comfortable, going to the same space. So I agree with you. Make a relation. If you are in an area where there are still sewing machine shops, physical ones, because that's definitely, I think, worth the investment of. And they have, as you say, so much knowledge, and they are very, very valuable people to have in your circle, so to speak.
Definitely. And we want them to stay there. We want them to have a business. So don't neglect them.
Yeah, it's very true. I think that's such a good point, because sometimes there's always, you can save money on this and that. But I mean, to me, that's kind of a faulty thinking in a way, because nothing is that clear cut. I mean, we are all depending on income and job security. So if everyone would just be do-it-yourselfer, it would kind of remove the need for skilled workers. And to me, that is not a good society to have. So to me, I think it's very, very good to support, that kind of service industry, because we will all help each other to keep it afloat. Because I think, especially now, maybe you can do like, when you're buying a sewing machine, you can do it online, and you can do like price comparison, I can get this for, say, €10 less or $50 less or whatever. But getting a sewing machine is also building a relationship, and I've actually bought all my sewing machines from physical shops, because that's been very helpful to me, because I've been able to try them out. And I've also been, when I bought my cover stitch machine and my overlocker, I also got like an introduction, like a physical class on how to use it, which to me has been extremely helpful, and that was included in the price. So I think those are the things that one has to take in consideration as well. Then of course I do understand, because in a lot of places there are no sewing machine shops available, but those that still have them, I think it's a good idea to definitely help to support them to stay in a physical location.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to have somewhere to actually go and ask questions, it's priceless. That's really, it's worth supporting your local shops, definitely.
Yeah.
And speaking of service, I think that that's the next common issue, because when you sew, there are lots of small fibers coming loose, especially if you're serging, overlocking, like cutting away the fabric. There are going to be so much dirt, basically. So cleaning your sewing machine, boring, but don't skip it.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, you can use like a brush and just get rid of the lint. I mean, the serger is when you open the serger, it's crazy how much lint that, even though it's supposed to fly away, it's so much inside the casing or the underneath it. So it's really good to have a brush. I actually myself use those like air stuff. But I read somewhere that it wasn't probably a good idea, so I feel a little bit unsure if I want to recommend it. But I have found it helpful to get a lot of the lint out from the surgery is to actually use those air cans. But
like
I think
it's blowing like a hair blower, or it's like a vacuum cleaner.
No, it's like the aerosol when you do it to clean your computer, where you're like, and I think
like
I know
canned air, basically. It blows.
Canned air, exactly. And I'm sure listeners that are more knowledgeable than I am could explain why it could be a problem. I don't know if it's kind of... You have to be careful, of course, because you don't want to have it too close, because then it can chill things. But I do like it for my surgery. And
the reason why people are not recommending it is because if there are dirt there, I mean small fibers, fabric fibers, and if you are blowing, then those, I mean, it can get further in and get into places where it shouldn't be. While if you are vacuuming it, then it is removed instead. So that's why they are like not recommended. I mean, I do both. I don't have a canned air, but just blow a little bit myself, and then it flies away. So I do a little bit of both, to be honest.
Yeah, but it's nice to have those mini vacuums that you can get and just get it out that way, because it is hard, and also it's really good to use a brush to go inside and clean all the moving parts, that especially when we talk about surgery, because there's a lot of like stuff. And that just having that little brush, and it's usually included when you get your sewing machine, is very helpful as well. So yeah, definitely take care. I mean, sewing machines, good quality sewing machines do cost a lot, so it makes a lot of sense to also invest in taking care of them properly.
Yeah, definitely.
Regular cleaning. I'm better at cleaning it than I am oiling it because I feel like that is definitely very, very important.
Yeah, I'm sitting here wondering what my situation with the sewing machine. You have that metal where you place the fabric, the metal plate. You can unscrew it. There is usually a lot of linter, like
dust,
built up stuff. I wonder how my situation is there. I haven't done that in I don't know when. I have had it on service, so I mean obviously they do it. But yeah, that could be like a a thing. You don't think that how can things go in there, because it's like it's such an obvious small hole, but yeah, it can get messy.
So maybe we are now calling out all your listeners, lift the plate and check your situation and get back to us.
Yeah, send us pictures if you have any dirty secrets that you want to share.
Because this is a safe space to do all this kind of stuff. And I think that what we always try to do, you and I, Malena, is that we come from humbleness and empathy, because we are not always doing the best things, because we understand that sometimes it's not that fun to clean a sewing machine or do all the proper preparation work. So we definitely hear you, and that's why it's nice to talk about this stuff in an honest manner. We are not like going on high horses and tell you have to do this, because we understand. We totally understand.
We talk with a lot of experience of good things and bad things, so we know what we're talking about in a also not so good way.
Another mistake that I think is important to think about is that you settings and figuring that out. And as you say, Malena, always do a sample, which is so true. I mean, for instance, if you're sewing over thicker materials or thinner materials, that will require adjusting both the tension normally. The needle tension is what you usually... We talked about the bobbin tension is the screw, but normally if that tension is... The bobbin tension is the way Malena says it should be, then you really only have to adjust the needle tension normally to get that balanced stitch, which means that you have no under thread showing through on the right side, and you have no needle thread showing through on the reverse side. It's just tight, even knots and a balanced stitch. But one common thing that I think that you might not think about is the fact that if you use thicker fabric, it will not alter the tension, it will also require different stitch lengths, because if you think about, if you're sewing like a cotton voile, that stitch length, if you put it to say 2.5 for instance, then that's one stitch length because it's such a thin fabric. But if you use thick denim and put 2 to 2.5, all these layers is going to also eat up some threads. So in effect, the stitch length will end up a little bit shorter. So it's usually a good idea to increase the stitch length a little bit depending on how the fabric, the thickness of the fabric and the properties of the fabric. So again, which is a good idea, why it's good to make a sample, because it does affect things, the thickness of the fabric.
Yeah, that's a smart thing. And when you have sewn this test sample now, spread open the fabric, like pull it apart, pull it a little bit as well, and then you see also the tension of the seam. Like, is it good? Is it like showing through a lot? Are both threads too loose, for example, like it's a lot showing, or does it look too tight even? Like it's a good thing to check afterwards, not just visually like look from it from the right and wrong side, but also like how do you say, press it open,
pull it apart.
Basically. Yeah,
pull it apart basically.
Pull it a little bit as well. Yeah, especially if it's supposed to be a tight garment, then it needs to handle that stretch basically.
Exactly.
So yeah, don't forget to do that as well.
That's a very good point, and especially I think when you're using a serger, for instance, you have to be aware of those things, because if there's something wrong with the tension, when you pull that serger seam apart, it's going to look like you will see those vertical horizontal stitches like visible, and of course they will be a little bit visible, but they shouldn't like expand basically when you pull it apart, because that's a good tell that something is off with the tension normally, I would say. So that's definitely worth checking out. I think it's very, very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that is very common, I think, when you are stressed, when you are rushing, is that all of a sudden your machine is not cooperating with you. It is just making a mess, and you don't understand why, because you are in such a hurry. Well, I would say 99% of the time it is because you are rushing it. You are not letting I'm mostly talking about regular sewing machines now. It doesn't really, it's not the same with the overlockers, but regular sewing machines, like you have to wait before removing the fabric until like the needle has probably gone up again. If it's just like halfway up and you're starting to pull out the fabric, first of all your needle might break, and it is something with the way the sewing machine are going, that the needle needs to be properly up and like almost starting to go down again. Like that's when you can remove the fabric, because otherwise it is something with the threads.
The threads, I think. It's not quite released. It's a similar, in a way, like the tension. I think it's a similar way that you cannot like properly pull it away unless the needle is in the proper position.
It's the highest up and then like almost starting to go down. Like this depends a little bit on the machine, and like you need to know your machines. But usually if it's not just halfway up and you're starting to remove it, then it could screw things up. I really like my machine here, my Bernina, because it's always automatically, when I stop sewing, the needle always go up at its highest point. Or if you press the heel, then it like stays down. So that's like really, I love that function,
good.
Because it's so easy to be in control then, basically. So don't rush and pull out the fabric when you're sewing and you are in a hurry. Like it will backfire on you.
Yeah, that's so true. Let's take that, take the breather and check everything. And that goes the same with start sew as well, because it's quite common, I think, to get like thread jams, that all of a sudden you're looking underneath, you have some of the threads, either the needle thread or the bobbin thread, kind of like jammed in and like a tangle or knots. And so it's also very important to always remember to pull back both the needle thread and the under thread back, so that you don't have it underneath the fabric, because sometimes you want to start sewing, you don't really think about that it's still threads. And also it can be very helpful to also make sure that the needle hits the fabric. So I actually like to pull the needle down in the fabric before I start sewing, and doing these two things can prevent jamming, especially if you're top stitching heavier fabric and stuff like that, I think it's more prone to get the kind of thread jamming. So usually, again, it's just that you are stressing things and just not making sure that everything is properly set up.
Yeah, and this has happened to me so many times on a regular sewing machine and on cover locks or cover stitch machines, is that I start too close to the edge because that's where you want to start. And then it's a really soft fabric, stretchy fabric, and the needle pushes the fabric down through the machines then, because it is so close to the raw edge, so the fabric stretches out even further. So then the fabric is pulled down through the machine. It gets caught in the bobbin, the thing and then it's stuck, and that is so frustrating. So if you are sewing a jersey on a regular sewing machine, start a little bit further away from the edge, and then you can, how do you say backwards?
Backstitch.
Yeah. You can start with backstitching and then start to move forward because then you start in the middle of the fabric, so it's easier not to get caught, that the fabric get caught. And I think you have on your blog a really good post. I think I've seen it on your blog when you are working on cover stitching and you don't want to start, because that's also, you have two needles then, so it's like double the risk that the fabric get caught. So you actually start sewing on a scrap fabric, like in the middle of the scrap fabric, and then you just align the real fabric to the edge and just sew over them in one continuous seam. That can also be a lot helpful with if you're cover stitching it.
Yeah, and I think also that's how I do it, because then you have, especially when you cover stitch on the flat. I mean, if you cover stitching on the round, for instance, you're hemming a finished sleeve or a finished garment, then of course you don't need it. But sometimes when you're cover stitching, you do it on the flat, especially if you're sewing narrow sleeve hems. You usually cover stitch the hem and then you sew the side seams, because it's quite tricky to sew very narrow round seams on a cover stitch. So that's where it's very, very helpful to use that piece of fabric to start with, because it also helps keeping the presser foot level, which you also want to do to ensure that the stitches are properly formed. So yeah, it's a very good idea. And I think also if you have this kind of, for instance, if you're top stitching, say, silk, you could probably do the same thing, because again, I mean, silk, those thin rayon, delicate fabrics, cotton voile, those have a similar tendency of getting pulled inside towards the bobbin area. If you do as Malena says, you start too close to the edge when you're sewing something on the flat. So yeah, that's a very, very good idea.
It's so easily happen. And I know that, for example, on industrial sewing machines, and I think you can do it on regular sewing machines as well. I'm a little bit unsure, but that metal thing, like that small table that you sew on, you can change it. Usually it has like quite a wide hole, so you are able to sew zigzag, but you can also change this to be just like a teeny tiny hole. And why it is on industrial machines is because then you only sew straight stitch, so you don't have to worry about zigzag. You only need that small little hole. So then there are less risk of the fabric pushing, or the needle pushing down the fabric into the hole if it's smaller. Basically, it prevents it from doing that. The danger, obviously, if you're sewing on a regular sewing machine, is that you change into zigzag, you forgot about it, and then the needle is hitting the metal and breaks. So this is why it's a little bit like a little dangerous. Just keep in mind, change it back so you don't have an accident. But this is like why industrial sewing machines don't switch from zigzag to straight stitch. It just do straight stitches because it's perfectly for that kind of stitch. And then you have other machines. You don't it's not that often that you have zigzag on industrial machines. It's not. I mean, sure, in underwear you have zigzag. But yeah, I mean, stuff, then you usually do overlocks seams instead of zigzag. So industrial machines are more specific to that specific seam, and they are like perfect for that. Home sewing machines is like, we're working with every different types of stitch, so we have to be okay at everything, but not perfect
Yeah.
at one type.
Yeah. That's always, and that's why it's always good to get to always do a sample, because then you have the opportunity to figure out these kind of things that we're talking about now that you might run into. And I think we all done that mistake. I mean, it's also adaptable, forgetting to switch presser foot, and then you have similar issues as well. So yeah, it's always good to remember that, sometimes we rush things and we kind of forget a basic thing, and that will tell when you're doing the sample, because then you will have it all figured out before you start sewing your precious real fabric. And
I think it's a good habit that you said, that you pull down manually your needle into the fabrics, because then you will notice this if it's something wrong, that it doesn't, you don't damage the machine or anything then if you are pulling the forward. Do you ever pull that backwards when you're like sewing on the regular machine?
Pull it backwards. What do you mean?
Like the handle, so the needle is like sewing. Do you ever? Because I've learned that you can only pull it forward. You can't really go back, like quarter maybe, but never like.
No, I don't. No, I don't pull it backward, but I kind of intuitively it does make sense, because it kind of mess things up, because there's a way forward and that forms the stitches, so you can't really reverse anything because the stitching is already formed. And another good idea, of course, is if you want to stop and check, it's good to have the needle down in the fabric, or you need to do, because then again, if you will probably have issues again trying to get like an even stitching. So there's sometimes there's a case for having the needle down when you're sewing as well, because maybe you want to stop and check that you top stitched properly or haven't missed anything. Then keep the needle down, and as Malena said, when you're done, then remove the needle and keep it up.
Yeah, but you should never backstitch by turning the wheel by yourself backwards.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that could be a beginner's mistake. Yeah. Like, I mean, you just don't know. But don't ever do that. Like, a machine has a setting, like a button usually that you push or something that makes it go backwards. So never turn that wheel backwards, because that could, it will mess things up.
It will mess things up. And another tip that I will give is that when you're sewing over uneven layers, you will probably have issues with feeding. And again, because the sewing presser foot needs to be kind of flat, because that's where it's able to form good stitches. So you have a couple of different options there. You can either, for instance, if you're sewing over a thick seam, for instance, if you're top stitching denim, then you could lift up the back of the presser foot, either just folding a piece of fabric underneath, or you can use something called a hump jumper or a height level tool. And I know also on some sewing machines the presser foot has a little knob that you can actually tilt it, which is another option. So you have lots of different options. You can also just use the case where you have the needles that you bought, because that usually also have a good height. So that's one of those things that I don't think when you're a beginner you realize that you need to keep the presser foot level as much as you possibly can in order to. But it's the same if you're sewing downwards, then you need to level it at the front instead, just to keep that until you've sewn over that uneven bumpy area.
Yeah, and it's these things like, take it slow. I mean, you don't have to rush it. You don't have to make everything in one continuous go from start to finish. Like, no, you can stop in the middle, adjust the level, and then continue on sewing and go really slow on those places. Like it is perfectly fine to sew slow as well. You don't have to hit the gas pedal to the floor and just go for it. Like, no, slow it down. It usually becomes better results if you go slow.
Yeah, we're not doing like Formula 1 here sewing. I mean, I always I definitely am guilty of doing like time saving tips for sewing, but you have to have that ingrained in you that this is not a race, and no one will give you a medal just because you sew a garment the fastest, because that's not what the business we're in. We're not trying to make money. We're trying to create good, well-made garments that we don't have to rip because we skipped on things. So I think that's a really good approach to have, that no one is going to judge you if you take it slow. I mean, I'd rather do that than end up doing lots of mistakes, because my experience, I mean, there are lots of ways you can sew more efficiently, I think, but going too fast and not double checking, that is not a time saving hack. Honestly, it's probably causing you more troubles, I think, than the opposite.
Yeah, and the end result won't be as good as if you took the time and actually do these kind of things, because then the end result will have a visual nice effect. So yeah, don't skip those kind of things.
Yeah. Should that be the final words for this episode? We probably have more mistakes, and also again, do please share your mistakes as well.
Yeah,
and
we'd love to hear
follow-ups. Yeah, I mean, this is a safe space to bring it all out, all your dirty laundry.
This is therapy. Come on, share it, and we will cheer you on. That's probably say that. Yeah, I've done that too. So don't be afraid.
Yeah, very, very true. Anyways, but again, if we would love to get more questions for our Q&A episode, so please, you can also do a comment if you're listening on Spotify. You can also comment on this episode if you want to ask questions, so that's an option as well. And we would also love to get more reviews, right, Malena? It was a while ago when we asked for more reviews, so if you would like to, we would be super grateful. If you want to share your thoughts, you can do that on Spotify and on iTunes, I know, at least. And of course, you can also comment on our YouTube channel as well. Where we also
because that would help us find other people in this lovely community. So we would love more people to join us here.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe you can break out the average on 400 listeners on each episode. The sky is the limit. Not really, but we all love you, so we're very, very grateful that you're tuning in to listen every week and follow us along on our own sewing journey. I think that was about it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. I am Johanna Lundström.
And I am Malena and Hjerpe. Bye bye.
Bye bye.